Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. Today, we are going to continue our review of citizenship by investment programs, and in particular, we are going to review the fastest citizenship by investment program, which is Vanuatu. I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, why you should get it, why you shouldn't get it, who it's right for, who it's not right for, and so stick around. Before we do that, though, if you have not already, please smash the subscribe button, click it, and also the notification bell so that you don't miss any of our notifications of the new videos coming out. Click the notification bell. If you haven't already and you like this video, click the like button. If you don't like the video, please tell us why not in the comments. We'd really appreciate the feedback. If you're at all interested in getting second passports, second citizenships, alternate residencies, being able to move somewhere, paying the lowest legal amount of tax possible, so reducing your tax through international tax planning, asset protection, offshore company formation, or opening bank accounts, etc., reach out to us. You can book a call with me, clarity.fm/Michael Rosmer. There's a link below, or you can visit our website, offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com. Okay, let's dive in. So for those of you who do not know, I was talking to a client earlier today, actually. And so he was asking about various different citizenships and helping him figure out, where would be the best place, etc. So we had a conversation about Vanuatu, and he's like, I haven't even heard of Vanuatu. So I certainly had not heard of Vanuatu until I first got into this business, whatever it was, 8 years ago or something like that, and started, helping me with structuring, and I'm looking at countries to form companies, and I learned all kinds of things about geography. So Vanuatu, for those of you who don't know, is a small island in the South Pacific. It is famous for one beach in particular. I think it's called Champagne Beach, known to be one of the top beaches. I have some clients who seem to really like it. In general, not a very established place, not a large population, etc. You're probably not going to want to live there. And so this brings up a really important point that I'll just touch on quickly, which is, listen, you do not need to live where you get a second citizenship or where you get a citizenship period, and you do not need a citizenship in order to live someplace. Okay, so when you're buying a citizenship in some place like Vanuatu, you're probably doing it for visa-free travel, for a backup plan, for possibly having some sort of escape hatch or something like that, right? So let's talk about, would you want Vanuatu? So start off with, the main selling feature of Vanuatu definitely is the speed. Okay, so it is possible to get a Vanuatu citizenship in approximately about a month and a half, and you don't necessarily need to go to Vanuatu. It costs a little bit extra, but we can arrange it for you so that they will come to you and they will go through the citizenship ceremony for you and get everything set up. So that's one reason that people tend to like Vanuatu, okay? It's also relatively inexpensive or relatively cost competitive, in particular for like families of four, okay? So the base price is around 150,000, okay? There's, I'm talking about, it's not actually 150,000 donation, but by the time you layer on the fees and things like this, it's around that. Now, if you're talking about having a bunch of other people on it, so your spouse, your kids, etc., then it ends up cheaper than some of the other alternatives simply because of the fact that they don't burden you with a whole bunch of extra due diligence fees per person. So this is one of the things that happens in a lot of these programs is they start throwing like a $7,500 per person due diligence fee on and all this kind of thing, and the numbers inflate fairly quickly. Okay, so Vanuatu, it's certainly not the cheapest. It's definitely not terribly, it's not much more expensive, but it's a little bit more expensive than some of the alternatives like Antigua, etc. If you're just talking about one person. But as you add multiple people on, it becomes more cost competitive with some of the other Caribbean options, okay? The third reason that people may like Vanuatu, or I don't know if I got to 3, but anyway, however number I got there, is you can change your name with Vanuatu, okay? So this is attractive for some people, and this is a good and a bad thing. We're gonna get into in a minute my assessment of what's going on, but just to set some context, it can be part of the process. You can change your name, and it is quite easy to be able to go through the process, okay? So a lot of the programs are pretty aggressive about their due diligence. They can be aggressive about source of funds, etc. So for instance, we were working with somebody for Montenegro, and kind of this question came up of, hey, listen, there's somebody who has a background in crypto, etc. They're not necessarily gonna let that through. So that's a bit of an issue. Whereas in the case of Vanuatu, it's pretty lax in terms of how the citizenship gets paid for, and that's fairly attractive to people, okay? So that's another piece on here. Okay, So what do I think about this citizenship? Well, kind of what I told this client today is, in my opinion, you're principally looking at three factors when you're looking at a citizenship, okay? Number one, of course, is you're looking at the price, right? Makes sense. How much it costs does matter. Number two, you're looking at what is your visa-free travel and access to other parts of the world. And we're going to touch on that in a minute. Number three, you're looking at the reputation, okay? These three things, I think, are probably the principal factors that you might want to consider. I guess you could also throw in their speed, right? And you know, any other flexibility that might be relevant to you, okay? So how does Vanuatu rank on these? Well, if we go down to the last one, on flexibility, it ranks very high, especially in a time when you can't travel right now very well, etc. I mean, this is great. Number two, it ranks really well on speed, right? So fantastic option in that regard. Like I said, it's the fastest program out there. Like theoretically, I think you can get it in about a month. I always tell people 2 months when I'm talking to them, just because, overpromise and underdeliver kind of thing. But in reality, 6 weeks is a pretty reasonable number. There's a bit of a thing about how it works because the Citizenship Committee meets and they review these applications. And so if you haven't prepaid your deposit, then it can basically, you can get approved and then it can wait till the next session to go to the next phase. So you can delay yourself by a few weeks. So that's something. But by and large, in most cases, that shouldn't be a situation that should be an issue for you, okay? Now, let's talk about cost. Cost is okay, as I said, especially for a family, but it's not amazing, right? It's definitely not like top of the top in terms of competitiveness from that standpoint. Previously, I reviewed the Turkish Citizenship by Investment program. In that case, I mean, yeah, you tie up more capital, but you end up with much lower cost in terms of like raw money out of pocket. And I would say that tends to be true with a bunch of these others. So certainly there's a couple of the Caribbean programs that the base price is $100,000. You end up with some fees over on top of that. So, by the time all is said and done, well, I'll review them specifically for you guys in the next while, but around $120,000 for one person, and then you stack on fees for dependents, etc. There is now some discount versions that they have that if you're willing to take longer and increase your obligations, okay, that can happen. And there's also some other programs where you can put money in and then get an immediate refund back and things like this in places like Nevis, which again, I'll do another video on that. So the price of Vanuatu is not amazing. It's not terrible, but not amazing, okay? What is the next factor? The next factor that we can look at is visa-free travel, okay? So visa-free travel, Vanuatu is, I would say, mediocre. It's certainly a tier 2 passport. Definitely not a tier 3 passport. If you read on kind of some of the indexes, they'll claim it's 130 countries visa-free access. I mean, depending on who you're reading and how they're defining visa-free and things like this, you get into there. To give you some contrast, the top countries in the world would have, like 170, 180 type countries visa-free. Now, I'm going to go through with you guys. I got the map here. Now, if you want to look this up for yourself, where I always send people, just because of the ease of these maps, is Wikipedia. Wikipedia has a great thing. You can basically look up visa requirements for citizens of blank, Vanuatu, Australia, Nevis, whatever, and it'll show you a map of where you get visa-free access. Okay. By the way, according to one of these passport indexes, it's 40th in terms of travel freedom, which, by the way, there will be like a bunch that are grouped for 5 or something like that. So it's actually a little bit worse probably than it sounds. Now, so we've got this map here. What is good and what is bad about this? So if you want to be in Latin America, this is bad. It has terrible access to Latin America, okay? It doesn't have Mexico. It doesn't have Brazil. It doesn't have Argentina. It doesn't have Chile. This is not got great access to Latin America. It's pretty good in Central America. So, Costa Rica, Panama, etc. A bunch of the Caribbean islands, in particular some of the British ones, which comes to our next part, which is they've got all of Europe. Okay, all of Europe is covered under Vanuatu, including UK and Ireland. Okay, so UK and Ireland are typically the tougher ones to get. They're not really that tough if you have the paid passports, but basically all the British overseas territories are also included, so that's good. You get Russia. That's an attractive thing for some people. okay? You don't get China. Okay, you have parts of Africa. Who cares particularly, but hey, you have it. You have, Thailand, Malaysia, stuff like this. You don't have Australia, you don't have New Zealand, you don't have Japan, you don't have Korea. So, that kind of gives you an idea. What I always tell people is there's basically, I would say, maybe like 5 top tier countries that are hard to get into, okay? They're UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the US, okay? Maybe Ireland, I guess, in there. So that's 6. Then there's some that are a little bit like lower, but still kind of desirable ones. So we have Japan, we have Mexico, we have Brazil, and then we have China and we have Russia. Okay, those are like the tough countries to get into. So most of the programs that you can buy, barring Turkey, Turkey's one that doesn't, give you access to the EU, except for Ireland and UK. Okay, there's only Vanuatu. Well, I mean, there's a bunch that have it, but there's a few that don't, right? So, for instance, Montenegro doesn't, Ukraine doesn't. I know Ukraine is not official. I have another video on that, but anyway, it's one. So yeah, you get into some of these cases that you don't get access to UK. All right, almost none of them give you access to Canada, the US. Almost none of them give you access to Australia, New Zealand, etc. But this kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of where to go. So if what you're concerned about is you're saying, hey, listen, I'd like access to Latin America, Vanuatu maybe isn't the best option for you. If you want access to Southeast Asia, it's a little better than some of these Caribbean ones, okay? If you're not really so concerned about that, this is kind of a backup for you, etc., then hey, Vanuatu could be pretty good, especially if you want something just fast. This brings us to our last point. What is the reputation of Vanuatu? Vanuatu probably has the worst reputation out of the citizenship by investment programs, unfortunately. So what does this mean? What is the consequence of this? Really where this matters is in banking. So there are some banks that just will not accept Vanuatu citizens. What this means is, hey, listen, you're going to be in a situation where you're like, hey, if I want to open a bank account here, if I still have my old passport, okay, maybe that's fine. But if I'm relying on my Vanuatu citizenship, certainly a bunch of places will not accept you, and that's not so good. You can sometimes get around that by being a resident somewhere else. So this is actually pretty common. So for instance, the person who immigrates from Iran to Canada, and they can get bank accounts fine because they're considered under their Canadian residency as opposed to their Iranian citizenship place of birth, right? So you have that kind of thing. But if you're actually from those countries, then it's different. Anyway, so how would I rank Vanuatu? I would rank Vanuatu as kind of like a little below average in terms of quality of citizenship to get. I think the main advantage is just the speed and the ease of getting it, where it ranks. In terms of speed and ease, it's top. It's very good. In terms of cost, like I said, it's slightly expensive to middle of the road. But in terms of quality, I would say that it's down. It's not as bad as say Turkish, right? But it's definitely lower on the list. So anyway, that is my assessment for you of Vanuatu. If you're interested in finding more about citizenships, which one might be best for you, whether, again, if you need a fat one fast, you can reach out to us. This is certainly an option then, or, there might be some other ones. Reach out to us. You can book a Clarity with me. Again, clarity.fm/Michael Rosmer. There's a link below in the description. Or you can check out our websites, offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com. Again, links below. If you haven't not already, smash the subscribe button, smash the notification bell, get updated about all the latest videos, all the latest news. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. We really appreciate any feedback that you've got. Please put any feedback you have or any questions, whatever, in the comments below. And yeah, I'm going to look forward to seeing you guys on the next video.